All right, boys and girls, we're going to look at division. And we're going to look at doing a few problems together with division. And we're going to be filling in some missing numbers, right? And so on page 115, hopefully you can review. If you want to go ahead and review, um, if you want to review 111, and you want to look at how they're moving, they're using regrouping to model and show you what's happening in a problem. You can go ahead and review this on your own, right? Look through these pages and you can see the steps that they're doing, right, on the pages. And then we're going to do some problems together once you've reviewed it. We're going to do problem 2. We're going to fill in all the missing numbers, right? And we're going to look at the missing numbers and green boxes and fill in all the steps. And then we'll do some of these problems down here using division, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and I have used graph paper. You can use regular white paper. I feel like graph paper kind of helps me to line up the problems a little bit. So I've gone ahead and folded it into my 8 sections. And we're going to look at problem number 2 to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and write my name. I'm going to write that we're doing lesson 3.3. And I'm doing pages 111 through 115. Okay? All right, so we're going to look at problem number 2 to start out with. Problem number 2 looks like this. It's going to go all the way across your page, okay? Because they're asking us to fill in missing numbers. So if you look at problem 2, you have 578 divided by 2, which looks like this. Now the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at the ones, right? So you can see that we're looking right here we're looking at the hundreds, not the ones. So we're looking at the number that's in the hundreds place, which is a 5. And we're asking ourselves, how many times will 2 go into 5? And it goes twice. And 2 times 2 is 4. We're going to multiply 2 times 2, and that's 4. But because we're in the hundreds place, we're going to say that it's 400. Okay? So that's the first step. That is dividing the 100 right here, the 500. So we're always going to start with the hundreds, and then we're going to move on to our next step, which looks like this. They have a little arrow in the book, and then they're showing you again 2 and 578. And they're saying, yes, you got 2, you got 400, and now we're going to subtract. So we're going to get 8, 7, and 1, 178, right? So we're going to look and see what our next number is going to be. We're going to ask ourselves, how many times will 2 go into, and I'm going to look at the tens place here. Before I only looked at the hundreds place, now I'm looking at the tens place. So I just put my fat finger over the ones place, and I say, how many times will 2 go into 17? And the answer to that is, it goes 8 times. And 2 times 8 is 16. but because we have an extra space, we're putting a 0 there, right? So now I'm looking at the next one. I kind of compressed a couple of steps. So now I'm going to write it again. And you could actually go like this. You could say this is going to be 178. So then the next step is going to be, we've got 2, we've got 8, we've got 400. We subtracted, we got 178. And we got 160. We're going to subtract again, and we're going to get 18 when we subtract. Then we're going to ask ourselves, how many times will 2 go into 18? And it goes 9 times, right? And 2 times 9 is 18. It goes in evenly. So, the way I like to think of it as is, this is the hundreds, right? So we worked on the hundreds right here. This first chunk is the hundreds. In other words, this is the first chunk. This chunk is the tens. So this is the hundreds. This is the tens. This is going to be the ones. And that's why you're going to have, it's a 3-digit number, so you're going to have 100s, 10s, and 1s. Okay? All right, let's do one without all of these steps, and we'll follow it through. So we're going to do number 3. Number 3 is 338 divided by 2. They're being very nice and giving us gentle problems. So we have 3 digits. This first little chunk is going to be our hundreds. We're going to have another little chunk that's going to be our tens. We're going to have another little chunk that's going to be our ones. Okay? So I'm going to ask myself, I'm only caring about the hundreds right now, so I'm going to cover everything but the hundreds. And I'm going to say, how many times will 2 go into 3? And it goes 1 time, right? So I'm going to put a 1 up here. 2 times 1 is 2, but I'm dealing with the hundreds, so it's going to be 200. And then I'm going to subtract. Now, I'm looking at how many times 2 will go into, I'm looking at the tens right now. How many times will 2 go into 13? Right? So 2 will go into 13. I only care about the tens. That's why I'm covering this 8. So 2 will go into 13 6 times, right? And 2 times 6 is 12. But I need to have another 0 over here, so I'm just putting a 0. Then I subtract, and I get 18. Now I'm dealing with the ones chunk, right? So I'm going to look, and I'm going to say, how many times will 2 go into 18? It goes 9 times. And 2 times 9 is 18. All right, so now we're going to subtract 18 minus 18, and that gives us no remainder. So our answer is 169. Okay? So it's really important to just remember the 100s chunk, the 10s chunk, and the 1s chunk. Right? All right, let's look at number 4. Number 4, I'm going to bump mine down a little bit so I don't run out of room. Number 4 is showing me 345 divided by 5. So remember, I'm going to have my hundreds chunk. I'm going to have my tens chunk. I'm going to have my ones chunk. So first thing I'm looking at is the number that's in the hundreds place. So I cover the other two numbers. They're distracting, and I say, how many times will 5 fit into 3? Well, it won't. So that means I'm going to have to, I can, if I want to, I could put a 0 here, and I could go like this. Right? Because that's not going to work. Now I can say, now that I'm at my tens, I can say, how many times will 5 fit into 34? Well, the answer to that is, let's see, 7 times 5 is too big. 6 times 5 is 30. So I'm going to write 6. I'm going to say 6 times 5 is 30. And I'm going to put another 0 there because I have nothing in the 5's place. So I'm going to put a 0. When I subtract, I get... Now I'm going to look and I'm going to say, how many times will 5 go into 45? Well, it goes 9 times, and 9 times 5 is 45, right? And I end up with no remainder. Okay? Let's try another one. Let's look at number 5. So number 5 has 656 divided by 4. Remember, this is going to be our tens, or our hundreds, sorry. This is going to be our tens. And this little space down here is going to be our ones, and we're going to run out of room. So we're going to have to squeeze it in. All right, so we start out with our hundreds. All I care about is this 6 right here. I'm ignoring the other two numbers, right? If you can ignore them and just without covering them, I have a hard time ignoring them. So I'm going to say, how many times will 4 go into 6? And the answer to that is once, right? What you're really asking is how many times will 4 go into 600, right? And it goes 100 times. And 100 times 4 is 400. And I just subtracted, and I got 256. Now I'm dealing with the tens, because this is our next number is the tens. I do not care about the 6, so I'm covering over the 6 because I don't really care about it. I'm going to ask how many times 25 can be divided by 4. And I think I could go 6 times, or 60. And 6 times 4 is 24 plus a 0 on the end. 240, really, because we're dealing with the tens chunk. 6 minus 0 is 6. 5 minus 4 is 1. And now I'm going to ask, how many times can 4 go into 16? This is our ones chunk, and it goes 4 times. And 4 times 4 is 16. And I end up with 0. Okay, let's flip over and we'll do problem number 6 up here. The more you do this, the easier it gets. Don't stress out too much. If you're struggling a little bit, just follow along with me. We'll do a bit more practice together so that this becomes easier. Okay, let's look at number 6. We have 138 divided by 3. So remember, this first chunk is going to be hundreds. Then we're going to be looking at tens. Then we're going to be looking at ones. It's really all about place value in math. That's why we do place value first. So we're going to be dividing 100. Then we're going to be dividing the number that's in the tens place, what's left over down here. Then we're going to be dividing the last number that's left over down here. Okay? All right. So we're looking at 3 going into 1. That doesn't work. So we're going to put a 0 there. That was the hundreds. Now we're going to look at the number in the tens place. I'm hiding the 8. I don't really care about the 8 right now. I'm looking at 13. Will 3 go into 13? Yeah, it goes 4 times, right? And 3 times 4 is 12, but because it's in the tens place, it's 120. Now we're going to subtract, and I get 18. Now we're looking at the ones place, 18. 3 will go into 18 6 times, right? 3 times 6 is 18. And I end up with 0. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do 7. Mr. Young has 256 stickers. He gives his 8 grandchildren an equal number of stickers. How many stickers does each grandchildren get? Each grandchild, sorry, not grandchildren. Let's see. 8. And we have 256 stickers. Remember, this first chunk is our 100s chunk. Second chunk is our tens. Third chunk is our ones. Right? So basically, we're always going to be starting out with the hundreds if this number has a place value with the number in the hundreds. So I'm ignoring the 56. The way I ignore it is I cover it. You can cover it with a pen, cover it with your finger. How many times will 8 go into 2? Well, it won't. So I'm going to multiply 8 times 0, and I get 0, 0, 0. Now I'm done with the hundreds. Now I'm going to look at the number that's in the tens place. 25. So will 8 go into 25? You betcha. 8 times 3 is 24. So I'm going to put a 3 up here. And I'm going to put a 24 here. And because it's in the tens place, instead of having it be 24, I need it to be 240. Right? So when I subtract, I get 16, and there 16 is 16 ones. 8 will go into 16 2 times. 8 times 2 is 16. So each grandchild gets 32 stickers. Holy cats. That's going to be awesome. Woo, if you like stickers, you're going to love Mr. Young. Okay, let's do number 8. Or actually, we're doing number 1 over here. Again, we're just practicing. We're just practicing our moves and practicing dividing. All right, so let's look at 267 divided by 3. So remember, this is our hundreds. Then we're going to do our tens. Then we're going to do our ones. So I'm starting out with my number that's in the hundreds place. And I have a 2. 2 cannot be divided by 3, so I'm going to put a 0 there. When I multiply 3 times 0, I get 0, 100, right? So I subtract. Now I'm dealing with my tens, so I just cover over the ones with my finger, and I ask myself, how many times will 3 go into 26? And 3 goes into 26, let's see, 8 times, right? 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 8 is 24, but we're in the tens place, so we want it to be 240. 7 minus 0, 6 minus 4 gives us 27. Now we have 27 ones. How many times will 3 go into 27 ones? Well, let's see. Probably 9 times, right? 3 times 9 is 27, and we have no remainder. Okay? Let's do number 2. Number 2 is 528 divided by 4. Remember, this is our hundreds, tens, ones. I just always like to write that on there because I learned how to do division differently when I was in elementary school, and it helps me to remember that I'm concentrating on place value. First, I'm looking at the number that's in the hundreds place. So 4 will go into 5 one time. 4 times 1 is 4, but since we're dealing with hundreds, it's 400. Then I subtract, and I get 128. I'm in tens territory, so I don't care about this 8. How many times will 4 go into 12? 3 times, right? But I'm going to need to put a 0 here, right? Because we're in tens territory, and we need to have a 0 on the end. Instead of being 12, it's going to be 120 because we're in the tens territory. So then I subtract, I get 8. And now I'm in ones territory. 4 will go into 8 twice. 4 times 2 is 8. So I have no remainder. Okay, let's try it again. Let's do number 3. Number 3 is 465 divided by 5. Remember, we're at hundreds territory, tens, ones, right? So far, so good. So we're going to ask ourselves, we're in the hundreds territory, how many times will 5 go into 4? Because 4 is in the hundreds place, and it won't. Now we're in the tens territory. So I'm covering over the ones, so I have the 6. I can see the 6. How many times will it go into 46? And let's see, 5 times 8, 9. And 5 times 9 is 45, but because we're in the tens territory, it has to be 450, right? We're going to subtract, and we get 15 ones. We're in ones territory now. And 5 will go into 15 3 times, and 5 times 3 is 15, and we get nothing left. So our answer is 93. Okay, one last one for practice. Let's see. Number 4 is 714 divided by 7. And remember, this is hundreds, tens, ones. So I'm in hundreds territory to start with. I only care about the number that's in the hundreds place. Will 7 go into 7? Yes. It goes one time or 100 times, right? 7 will go into 700 100 times. That's basically what we're saying. 7 times 1 is 7, or 700, because we're in the hundreds territory. We subtract, and we get 14. Right? Now we're looking at 7 going into 14. Right? Now, we don't have a number here to look at. This is like 0, 1. So when we're looking at the tens territory, we can't, 7 won't go into 1 evenly, so we're going to put a 0 here, right? So 7 times 0 is 0, 0, 0. We subtract and we get 14 ones. Will 7 go into 14? Yes, twice. So did you see that when I had 14 there, I couldn't do, that would be, the 14 would be in ones territory. So I had to cover the 4, and I'm just looking at the hundreds and tens, right? The number that's in the hundreds and tens, because I'm in tens territory. And it would not, 7 doesn't go into 1, so I put a 0 there. Okay? So this is very different from how your parents learn division. Your parents probably right now, if they're watching this with you, they are freaking out. It is not how I learned division either. It is the Singapore math way of doing division. If your parents would like to show you their way of doing division, that is totally fine. You can pick which way you like best. Parents have a long way of doing division with divide, multiply, subtract, assess, bring down, remainder. Sometimes when I used to teach math before Singapore math, I would call it divide would be daddy, multiply would be mommy. Right? There were all sorts of little ways for you to remember. Remainder was Rover, their dog, right? So this is a way that's just highlighting place value. And if your parents want to help you and show you how to do it their way, that's fine too. This is just a way that we're really looking at place value when we're dividing. Instead of looking so much at the process of divide and bring down and remainder, and it's the bringing down that is always the problem with kids. As somebody who's been teaching for 23 years, the bringing down is always what messes kids up. And so Singapore math just kind of went through and they looked at countries where kids were really good at dividing, and they realized that the countries where people were good at dividing were the countries that weren't bringing down numbers, right? They were the countries that were focusing on hundreds, tens, and ones, right? If you want to teach, if you want your parents want to teach you how to do it their way, and you understand their way, that is awesome. Okay, I don't want to cause family splits and rifts and problems and cause everybody to have breakdowns. This is just the way that our math program demonstrates how to teach division with place value, with a heavy emphasis on place value. Okay? So, we will practice some more of this. There's more time for us to practice division. And so if you didn't understand it doing this, don't be too stressed out. There will be more practice with division. No worries. The more you do something, the better you get at it. So I don't want you to be stressed or freaked out. This was just a little introduction to it. You probably haven't done long division before. So be nice to yourself. Don't freak out and get upset. Realize that you're going to do it a whole bunch of times. And on one of those times, the light will click on and you'll go, oh, I get this. Right? That's how it always is when you're practicing something. You get better at it and it's a good feeling. All right, so thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed Singapore Math Division. Hope your parents aren't crying and grabbing Kleenex right now. or or throwing pencils. Sorry, I'm laughing because the first time I tried to do this, I was like, what? I don't get it. And now I feel like I like this better than the way that I was taught when I was in fourth grade back in the dinosaur days, right? I kind of enjoy this. It's a little bit easier for me to do. And I don't have as many steps. That's helpful too. All right. Talk to you later.